Oklahoma State heads into the bye week with another win over a top 25 opponent, I'm going to put the final nail in the coffin in the debate of whether it was Bill Belichick or Tom Brady, or if that even matters. Plus, Cliff Kingsbury is finally justifying his hiring as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. What's going on, everybody? This is The Gray Area, and my name is Grayson Singleton. Thank you for watching this on OcaliTV.com or listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you might be finding this show. So like I said, it's another great week to be a student here at Oklahoma State, particularly because the football team is 5-0 for the first time since 2011 and that historic season when the team went on to win the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. So the big win over Baylor probably wasn't the most exciting thing on planet Earth. It was a 24-14 win, which was a little bit of a letdown after the 31-point first-half explosion against Kansas State a week ago. But now the Oklahoma State Cowboys head into the October 9th bye week with a 5-0 record, and they set up a showdown in Austin with the now 21st ranked Texas Longhorns, which that can change because they have their Red River rivalry next week against Oklahoma. So obviously the main story is whether or not Spencer Sanders, and this is going to be the story every week, whether or not Spencer Sanders is the quarterback for Oklahoma State. And to that I say, well, wait till we get to the numbers of the game. Basically, why is this a topic of discussion again after a 344-yard day against Kansas State? Well, because he threw 3 interceptions against Baylor. Only one of which, if you know football, was his fault. Look, after we praised the offensive line against Kansas State, they reverted back to pretty much their old normal selves of costly penalties, no protection, and providing absolutely zero space for any running back to run through, which resulted in, yes, Jaylen Warren getting over 100 yards again, but this time on 36 carries. And while the defense rose to the occasion, only surrendering 14 points against an offense that was going berserk over every single team it had played up to date, including Iowa State, who was ranked 14th in the country at the time Baylor played them a week ago, there has to be some level of concern for why the offense is going almost 10 possessions a game without scoring a single point. And it comes down to, at this point, Casey Dunn has extended his playbook, and Mike Gundy has given him the clearance to do so. But at this point, this comes down to poor offensive line play. And the offensive line is something we have much maligned for pretty much legitimate reasons. However, we overlook that, and in the NFL particularly, we overlook the offensive line because of the presence of skill position players. And take the New York Giants, for example. The Giants have not made the playoffs since 2016, where they went 11-5 and lost to the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. Since that time, they have had dynamic playmakers: Saquon Barkley, Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Darius Slayton, a ton. And they've had a capable quarterback, be it Eli Manning at the back end of his career, or Daniel Jones, who is a capable starting quarterback in the NFL, albeit not fantastic. The problem with the Giants' offense has been, as it has been in the bottom third of the NFL for that time, is the offensive line. And the offensive line has been shaky to be nice. And that's the situation with Oklahoma State. Because you have explosive running backs like Jaylen Warren and L.D. Brown. You have receivers who can go out there and make you plays. Tay Martin, again, was fantastic this week against Baylor, following up on his 100-yard performance against Kansas State. Brennan Presley is no scrub. And the freshmen and sophomore underclassmen like Rashad Owens, who caught a touchdown, Blaine Green and Bryson Green when he comes back, and Jaden Bray when he gets fully healthy after the bye week, are also dynamic playmakers alongside Spencer Sanders, who has talent in his arm as well as with his feet. The problem is when your offensive line, the structure and the stalwart of your offense and really your team, does not play up to snuff, does not open those running lanes, does not give your quarterback ample protection to find those playmakers, the whole thing tanks. And if the offensive line play does not improve before Oklahoma State goes up against those Big 12 staples like Texas, like Oklahoma, and to some degree Iowa State, who has a formidable defense, Oklahoma State's going to end up in the same situation as it did last year. Yeah, you might win a Cheez-It Bowl against Miami, but the real potential for this Cowboys team will go down the drain because you can't get the offensive line intact. So now we come to the point where I am off of this train of fire Casey Dunn and fire Mike Gundy. I'll say it today. Those guys have done a pretty decent job this season. If you're going to fire them, maybe down the line in 2 or 3 years, which probably will not happen, the offensive line coach needs to be gone first. Because now it's not only a situation of a running back getting stopped a yard behind the line of scrimmage or Spencer Sanders getting sacked 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. There are ill-timed holding penalties littering the box score. And that's what's killing drives. Because you can get into field goal range all you want to, but if you have a holding penalty that takes you back to the 40-yard line, in college football, that's out of field goal range. And you've gone from possibly 3 points to 0 points, which at the end of the game adds up to where you only score 24 points against a Baylor defense that against the only team that is noteworthy on their schedule, Iowa State, prior to this game, this past weekend, gave up 29 points. So that's the situation where we end up with Oklahoma State. But before I close out this part of the show, I want to go through some numbers of importance throughout the game. Single numbers that had a lot to do with the outcome of the game. And we'll start with the number 11. 11 possessions in which Baylor did not score. They only had 2 scoring drives, the 2 touchdowns for those 14 points. But on 11 drives, 9 of them ending up in punts and 2 of them ending up on turnovers on downs, the defense held the Baylor Bear offense without a point. And that was phenomenal and absolutely monumental because the offense really struggled to get the ball downfield. They scored on 4 points and also lost a turnover battle 3-0 on Spencer Sanders' 3 interceptions. The Oklahoma State defense didn't even get a turnover, even though it came close multiple times. Jason Taylor almost had an interception, Devin Harper and Colby Harvell-Peel as well. But 11 possessions, the Oklahoma State defense did not surrender a point. Absolutely fantastic for my money right now, is the best defensive unit in the Big 12. 6.3. And that is the yards per carry by quarterback Spencer Sanders. Now, he had a subpar game through the air, but his legs continue to be the reason why the Cowboy offense continues to put up the amount of points that it does. Albeit it is in spurts and it is few and far between at some particular moments in time. But if you go back to Tulsa, if you go back to Boise State, if you go back to Kansas State, and now to Baylor, at some point in each of those games, Spencer Sanders' legs have been a moment, have provided moments that you can say that play helped with winning football. And that's why Spencer Sanders is this quarterback, because he's the winning quarterback in this system with the lack of skill at the offensive line. 34, and that is the time of possession for Oklahoma State. Now, 34 minutes and 35 seconds to be exact was the amount of time that Oklahoma State held the ball. But what's significant about this is that it is now the second consecutive win in the second game that Oklahoma State has won the time of possession battle. They are 2-0. And yes, the Cowboys are 5-0 overall in the season, which means they've won 3 games in which they didn't hold the ball for more than 30 minutes. But this is something to keep track of as the season progresses. Can Oklahoma State make this an automatic win when they win the time of possession battle? And that will be something that can help keep the defense fresh and render to them only giving up 14 points and 2 scoring drives throughout an entire game. It all comes back to complementary football. 38. And that is the amount of touches that Jaylen Warren, the starting running back, saw, which is concerning, to be quite honest with you. This includes 36 touches on the ground and 2 receptions. And look, Des Jackson and LD Brown need to hurry back because this guy is going to be run into the ground by the time you get to November and those games against Oklahoma and Texas Tech. But so far, Jaylen Warren has been given a load to carry, and he has provided very well. Now, he only averaged 3.6 yards per carry on those 36 carries, which led to his 125 rushing yards. So the production was there, the efficiency not so much. Also, he didn't score a touchdown, or he did score a touchdown, only one this time, but it was much needed. And the last number is 3. And 3, that is a tackle for losses by defensive end Colin Oliver, who started the game for the injured Brock Martin, who had been starting for the injured Trace Ford, who again is out for the season with a torn ACL. Now the pass rush production that Trace Ford leaves behind has not really been replicated by Martin or Colin Oliver, even though they have gotten to the quarterback in spurts. However, what makes Trace Ford special is that his defense against the run is one of the more phenomenal on this team, and that has not lacked with Martin or Colin Oliver. So that's what's of importance with Oklahoma State as they head into the bye week. Their next game is against the Texas Longhorns in Austin, the Clash of Oranges, like I like to call it. But let's transition to this. Tom Brady made his return to Gillette Stadium, this time as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it'll probably be the last time Tom Brady actually plays against the New England Patriots, unless he plays 4 more years when the Patriots come to Tampa. But it probably will be the last time he plays in Foxborough, Massachusetts, unless he plays 8 more years, which, judging by the trajectory of Tom Brady's career, is all too possible. But of course, the debate and the storyline around anything Tom Brady is, was it Brady or was it Belichick that was more responsible for the Patriot dynasties? And yes, I said dynasties plural, because there were 10 years separating the last championship of the first 3-year run and the first championship of the back 3. So I like to say dynasties, because 10 years between a championship does not lead to me saying that's a dynasty. Just a little nugget of thought there. But here's the thing. Don't kid yourself that this was all Tom Brady. Yes, the New England Patriots have not been the same since Tom Brady left. But if last night showed anything, is that Bill Belichick is just as important to that dynasty, if not more, than the quarterback he drafted. Let me explain. Last night proved it. Last night, Tom Brady only managed 19 points and narrowly squeaked out of Foxborough with a 19-17 win over his former team. And we knew Bill Belichick was probably going to empty the kitchen sink to stop Tom Brady. And he did so phenomenally, even with his starting slot corner, Jonathan Jones, being injured for the back half of the game. Here's the thing that I took note of. Bill Belichick's defenses always take away what you do well, or do best. And he did that against Tampa Bay. This offense that had been scoring 30 points per game up until last week against the Los Angeles Rams, which the only team that's going to score 30 points against the Los Angeles Rams this year is probably the Arizona Cardinals, who nearly dropped a 40-burger on them. But here's the thing that Bill Belichick did that gets vastly underrated. Number one, he drafted Tom Brady, which, in retrospect, that might not seem like a big deal, except all 32 teams, including Bill Belichick and the Patriots, passed on him 5 times. Tom Brady, we forget, was the 199th pick in that 2000 draft, in which the Patriots selected him in the 6th round. So he obviously saw something there that made Bill Belichick say, this guy might be the heir apparent to Drew Bledsoe, which obviously that era came in sooner rather than later. So first of all, he drafted Tom Brady. Number 2, Bill Belichick was the master at defense, and he did something and does something that not many defensive coordinators do. Most defensive coaches and defensive coordinators scheme their game plan to adjust to the offense. Bill Belichick makes the offense adjust to him. And that is something that nobody does, at least not in a quantifiable way or a visual way. What Bill Belichick has done so much throughout his entire coaching career is identify what you do best and completely eradicate that from any possibility of happening. Now, how much easier does that make playing offense, knowing that your defense is going to take away what the other team's offense does best? Tom Brady never had to really get in a track meet until the Super Bowl where they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. As a matter of fact, in most of the Patriots Super Bowl wins, the Patriots did not have to score but so much. You go to the early days. Those days were decided by field goals in which the final score was less than 25 for the Patriots. As the even as the years progress and the Patriots beat teams like the Seattle Seahawks, again, how many points did the Patriots score in that Super Bowl? Oh yeah, 24, I believe. That is due in large part to Bill Belichick's preparation of taking the offense's best weapon away from them. What else did Bill Belichick do well? Well, he was a master at finding Brady offensive coordinators. Now, you can say that these guys did not have great success as head coaches, and that much is fair, be it Bill O'Brien, Josh McDaniels, or whomever. However, not everybody's cut out to be a head coach. That's just a fact. But if you can find elite offensive coordinators, that is a testament to the head coach and to the general manager, both of whom in this instance happen to be Bill Belichick. And obviously, we can talk about Bill O'Brien, and then he would go on to have a moment's success with the Houston Texans before going back to the college ranks as the offensive coordinator for Alabama, replacing Steve Sarkisian, who left to be the coach at Texas. But the real testament to Bill Belichick's eye for offensive coordinators is, of course, Josh McDaniels, who was not a great head coach with the Denver Broncos, but has been Tom Brady's right-hand man up until last season. Now, the offense under McDaniels was always great. They found running backs. They found receivers, always. They found tight ends. They found ways to keep Tom Brady a stationary target and a sitting duck as an immobile quarterback and as an aging immobile quarterback upright. They found ways to get the ball out of his hands, reducing the amount of exposure to defensive linemen that he had. All of this has played into Tom Brady being able to play at this high level at the age of 44. So let's recap what we have so far. Bill Belichick, number one, he drafted Tom Brady. Number two, his defensive schematics are second to none and are an innovation of their own. And number three, he found offensive coordinators for Tom Brady. And number four, Bill Belichick was a master at finding players at a bargain. And now, what does this mean? See, in a hard salary cap league where you often have to rob Peter to pay Paul, if you can find a bunch of high-level players at bargains, that sets your team up for immense success because you can get more high-level players. Remember, in a hard cap league like the NFL, properly pricing commodities is of the utmost importance. And nobody did it better over the 20-year period that Tom Brady was in New England than Bill Belichick. He found guys like Wes Welker, Randy Moss, Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski, Deion Branch, Torrey Holt, a number of guys, and that's just on offense. Let's go to defense. Richard Seymour, Rodney Harrison, Asante Samuel, Junior Seau, Willie McGinnis. All of these guys at bargains, and when they became too expensive for the team, he cut them loose and kept winning at that. Brandon Spikes, Jared Mayo, guys like Eric Rowe, who is now with the Dolphins. Kyle Van Noy, once he got too expensive, he went to Detroit, and what happens? He's right back in New England. J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore now. This is the genius of Bill Belichick, the GM. Now, Bill Belichick's one weakness and the one blemish on the resume for Bill Belichick is that in recent years and toward the end of Tom Brady's tenure with the Patriots, his drafting, particularly of wide receivers, was not very good. But up until that point, when it comes to hiring coordinators, when it came to finding players at bargains, and when it came to finding bargains in the middle rounds of the draft, Bill Belichick was second to none. Particularly Aaron Hernandez, who obviously his story ends pretty tragically, but as a football player, this was a first-round talent that Bill Belichick found in the fourth round, which again, not only saves you in terms of draft capital, but saves you money, because a first-round pick is automatically going to sign for a bigger deal than a fourth-round pick. Rob Gronkowski he found in the second round. Wes Welker was undrafted and was kicked to the curb by multiple teams, including the Miami Dolphins, before he landed with the Patriots. Randy Moss and his troubled past led him to being released by the Minnesota Vikings. Everybody knew he was a stud player, but again, he found him at a bargain. He did so with Antonio Brown as well, but Antonio Brown's antics proved to be something that led to his dismissal from New England. Josh Gordon for a moment as well. And all of these things were working. There were some circumstances outside of Bill Belichick's control that led to the last two not working out in New England. But here's the thing, and this is not to diminish the accomplishments of Tom Brady, because I will admit, as a Peyton Manning fan, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. When you, of course, factoring in postseason success as well, which kicks him over the top of guys like maybe Peyton Manning or a more talented guy like Aaron Rodgers. But to not diminish Tom Brady, let's also in the same breath not diminish Bill Belichick's importance as the anchor and the architect of this entire Patriot run of dominance over the AFC. And now, maybe it could be over. Maybe. Or maybe it might just take a hitch while Mac Jones develops. But as long as Bill Belichick is either the head coach or the GM, and we don't know for how much longer it will be because he is 69 years old, the Patriots will always be a formidable threat with or without Tom Brady because of the uniqueness of how Bill Belichick runs his system. And I'm not talking about the Patriot way. I'm talking about finding players at bargains, hitting on coordinators, which is importance is very understated in the NFL today. The importance of properly pricing commodities. Those are things that can transcend even the greatest quarterback of all time. And they will be with the Patriots, and they will be with Bill Belichick's successor, which is why don't kid yourself that this is all Tom Brady. Yes, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, but Peyton Manning was also the greatest quarterback of all time at one point, and he only had two. All right, from one coach who's been established to another who is seemingly becoming more and more established as the weeks progress. Cliff Kingsbury. So the rise and the story of Cliff Kingsbury goes like this. He couldn't win in college. The college ranks deemed him unfit to be a head coach. Somehow gets a head coach in the NFL. A little wonky, yes. Is this a testament to Sean McVay? Absolutely. Because I will still hold to the opinion that Sean McVay and to a lesser extent Kyle Shanahan, both of whom are in Cliff Kingsbury's division, are the reason Cliff Kingsbury has a job in the first place. Now, everybody laments, everybody with a scintilla of football sense laments that Cliff Kingsbury did not deserve an NFL job and the job that he got coaching the Arizona Cardinals. That much is true. But this season, Cliff is justifying that. And in the first 2 years of his NFL coaching career, the Arizona Cardinals were average at best, peaking last year at a mediocre 8-8, which, if you're from Dallas, you're very familiar with because that just sounds like the story of the Cowboys. Anyway, Cliff Kingsbury's offense now is leading the Arizona Cardinals to being one of the last unbeaten teams remaining as we are a quarter through the NFL season. And what this looks like is this. They're second in total offense, first in scoring, and the defense, a unit that he is notably known for not paying attention to, and maybe he still really doesn't, is 10th in scoring. So why did Cliff Kingsbury not deserve this job in the first place? Well, for one, he was the coach for an extended period of time at Texas Tech University. And he was famous for his high-flying offenses that could put up points with anybody. You need to put up 50, he's got it. You need to put up 60, he's got it. You need to put up 70 points. Oh, yeah, they could probably do that too. But they weren't winning games. His defense was atrocious, and at some points his offense would let him down to the point where they had no chance of winning. He was 35-40 in his years at Texas Tech and was hired as the offensive coordinator at the University of Southern California after his dismissal from Lubbock, Texas. Not even deemed to be a quality head coach in the college ranks. Lo and behold, the Arizona Cardinals who are looking for a guy to replace Steve Wilks, who seemed over his head after a 1-15 season in his only year with the Cardinals. Now, things get dicey. Because why is Cliff Kingsbury, a guy who couldn't even succeed at a Big 12 school in the middle of Texas, who was deemed not even fit to be a head coach in the college ranks, called upon to an NFL job? A job that a lot of people go through an immense amount of hoops and years of turmoil and toil to try to get to that point. Why him? Well, it's the Sean McVay effect. And what Sean McVay did when he replaced Jeff Fisher as the coach of the then St. Louis Rams and now the Los Angeles Rams is this offensive innovation that took the Rams to a Super Bowl and took them to number one in most people's power rankings a week ago before they got slaughtered by Cliff Kingsbury's Cardinals. And look, maybe the Rams, who are still my Super Bowl pick, rebound from this and then continue to assert themselves as one of the top teams in the NFC and ultimately maybe take down Tampa Bay and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But Cliff Kingsbury has benefited from that because even though he didn't have great success at Texas Tech and he was known to not really care for defense, still had an elite offense and a very innovative one at once. And you remember who his quarterback was at Texas Tech? It was Patrick Mahomes, perhaps the greatest talent at the quarterback position we have ever seen. So he gets a new dynamic quarterback in Kyler Murray. And in his second year, he does one thing that was absolutely phenomenal. He hired defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, who was a mediocre at best head coach with the Denver Broncos. And this theme of hiring coordinators has followed throughout this show as we've talked about Casey Dunn with Oklahoma State. We've talked about Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien, as well as Eric Mangini with the New England Patriots, and now Vance Joseph as a great defensive coordinator for Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals. And look, Sean McVay is known to not really pay attention to his defense. Kyle Shanahan pays a little bit more because he comes from a more old school coaching tree that starts with his dad, Mike Shanahan. But Cliff Kingsbury is known to not really care for his defense. So if you're going to do that, you have to hire a great personality to be your defensive coordinator, and there are not many better than Vance Joseph. And Vance Joseph has taken a unit that has been much maligned and has been at the bottom of the barrel in the NFC and in the NFL for the most of the last 5 years, and has turned it around. Yes, the addition of J.J. Watt has helped, but they have also developed guys like Chandler Jones, who took the next step after being a pretty good player for New England, and has developed Byron Murphy, a third-year corner from Washington, into a seemingly elite corner and one of the next stars at the corner position, as well as safety Budda Baker. So the Arizona Cardinals, they're 4-0 right now, and they look to be the best team in the NFL. I'm not going to reveal my power rankings today because there's still a couple Monday night games we need to see happen. But Cliff Kingsbury, for all the lamentations of him actually getting the job with the Arizona Cardinals, in year 3 is now proving that he can coach in the NFL and is justifying the fact that he was hired, albeit undeservingly so, as an NFL head coach with the Arizona Cardinals. And now the Cardinals, if this continues, are a serious threat to win the Super Bowl for the first time in its franchise's history. All right, that'll do it for me on the gray area. My name is Grayson Singleton. Thanks for watching OcallieTV.com, as well as the podcast, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, or wherever you might be finding your podcast. God bless. Keep cool. We will see you next time.